What's going on, Exiles? It's Hegemony, and I want to share with you guys yet another build right before the Prophecy League launches. Are you one of those guys that loves playing Reave, but doesn't like playing on the right side of the tree due to the nature of the defenses dealing with evasion and lower life pools? Well, I might have the build for you. This is a crit Reave Marauder, yes I said crit, and it's on the left side of the tree using the Berserker Ascendancy. I made this character during the Hardcore Talisman League, and I managed to get this character to level 90, and then shortly after I died doing a dual conservatory map. That means the dual twin vols. I ended up getting laser beam twice in a row with a shock stack, and that ended up in the character's demise. If you would like to see the VOD, I'll link that below in the description. However, despite the death and the T14 dealing with elemental damage, this character is quite tanky. So let's dive right into the mechanics of the build and how it synergizes with the passive skill tree, with items, and the Ascendancy. With the weapon, I chose a dagger due to its high base crit chance. This dagger was obtained in the Hardcore Talisman League. It's 321 DPS. I crafted 21 crit chance on it, and I purchased it for 1.5 exalts. And you may be wondering, well, you're using a dagger, are you using Adder's Touch? Hell no. That shit is way too far. It is all the way in the upper right hand corner next to the shadows start. And as you can see, I am a Marauder on the left hand side of the tree. And then your next conclusion is, well, you have no dagger nodes and you don't have all the bread and butter crit nodes on the right hand side of the tree. How can this build even be good or do damage? Well, luckily we have one of the most efficient melee crit wheels next to Resolute Technique. It gives you 25, 30, 30, 50 respectively. It's called Disemboweling. In addition, it also grants you 40 crit multiplier. Well, that's only one crit wheel. What about the others? And between Marauder and Duelist, we have a cluster called Eagle Eye. This grants you accuracy and crit chance. Accuracy, crit multiplier, attack speed, these are the common factors in a good crit build. And you may be thinking, well, the Eagle Eye wheel is hardly a crit wheel, it gives you very little crit chance. And you might be thinking, well, it's just not enough. And now we'll go through the passive skill tree and itemization choices that make this a legitimate crit build. The number one item to bring this crit build into viability is called the Abyss's Helm. This grants you 40 to 60 flat physical damage to your attacks. In addition, it gives you up to 25 to all attributes, and here's the kicker, it gives you up to 225 melee critical strike multiplier. This is more multiplier that you can get on the entire right side of the tree with all the dagger nodes. It has great armor, because we'll have armor scaling on the left side of the tree. And the downside is it has 40% to 50% increased physical damage taken. This is a pretty hefty downside. But it's nothing the Marauder can't handle. Well, it could be argued that an Evasion person can just wear this helmet and get the same buffs. However, they have a much harder time dealing with the downside of the increased physical damage taken. So let's talk about how we deal with the downside with the Marauder and the Abysses, so that we can run this character in hardcore leagues. This character has the power to generate up to 7 endurance charges. In addition, it has 17.2k armor in its current state, along with 48% chance to block attacks. I'm using a Lionized Remorse shield that gives me 1500 armor, life, physical damage reduction from projectile attacks, and increased block chance. This is a very accessible shield, I highly recommend it. The movement speed reduction is hardly a downside because we move in a very special way. The Lionized Remorse shield or a high armor rare shield is required for this build to be good in hardcore leagues. We use shield block, solidity, shield block, and shield defenses. And moving along to Duelist, we pick up Defiance. Followed by Defiance, we have shield defense nodes. And in the southernmost part of the Duelist tree, we have more additional shield block nodes. And looking at this shield, it says it gives you 1500 armor, but with all these nodes and the passive tree scaling, this shield gives me over 7.2k armor and 48% chance to block attacks. But that's not all, we also run Arctic armor, which mitigates physical and fire damage, and it also leaves chilled ground and refracts chill onto enemies that hit me. I only have a 1265 armored chest that can improve over 2k pretty easily. In addition, I have a passive 339.4 life regen per second that is increased to 418 life regen per second with 7 endurance charges, thanks to the node before stamina, which grants 0.2 maximum life regeneration per second per endurance charge. Blood Rage is used to help me leech life. In addition, it gives me frenzy charges and attack speed. I also use the unique flask called Taste of Hate, which converts physical damage taken as cold damage, so it gets mitigated by your resistance versus your armor. This is not necessary by any means. You could simply replace this with the Rumi's concoction and get that extra tankiness. However, Taste of Hate does give you a lot of extra elemental damage. And the other defensive properties is that it grants you plus 6% maximum cold res, in addition to giving you 30% chance to avoid chill and freeze. With similar defenses, I guarantee you that Reflect will not be a problem. In fact, Ele Reflect is a bit more of a nuisance than Physical Reflect because I'm using the Physical to Lightning gem. The Physical to Lightning support gem is used so that I can apply Shock at a very reliable rate. And Shock is important for damage scaling and proccing my Herald of Thunder, which then grants me power charges because I have Curse on hit, Assassin's Mark, Herald of Thunder. I also have Vol Reeve tied in with Curse on hit, Assassin's Mark. It just allows me to ramp up power charges quicker in addition to getting more damage and 9% extra crit chance on anybody that is cursed with it. So the premise of this character is dealing shitloads of cold and lightning damage. My tooltip reads that I do anywhere from 1500 to 4.5k lightning damage per hit, and that's mainly thanks to Physical to Lightning support gem converting 50% of my Physical to Lightning, but we also get some lightning damage added from Herald of Thunder. And with cold damage, we do anywhere from 1200 to 3200 damage thanks to Hatred. This is so important because we need to be able to shatter, freeze, and chill enemies. Shattering corpses means that they cannot be resurrected, porcupines can't quill on death, shelled crabs cannot be resurrected into their second form on death, and the corpses are no longer eligible to be detonated by either a detonation totem or a monster that can cast Detonate Dead. This character does not need to do any fire damage, but if you're keen on doing it, you could swap Arctic Armor for Herald of Ash. However, I do not recommend it in hardcore leagues. And because I do all this elemental damage, Taste of Hate makes sense because it increases my max cold res, helping me deal with cold damage reflection. And I chose a Surgeon Topaz Flask of Warding because I like Curse Immunity on demand, and the ability to roll Curse Immunity on demand is pretty powerful. The Atziri's Promise Flask was chosen because it adds extra chaos damage from both my physical and elemental damage, and then it allows me to leech off of that chaos damage by 2%. In addition, it raises my chaos resistance up by 35%. And now that we've brushed up on the flask, let's look at the rest of the gear. My gloves are actually great because they give me a lot of accuracy, flat fizz, attack speed, life, and 1 resistance. This supports a crit build in big ways. I didn't want to use Malagaros or Shadows and Dust because it doesn't grant me armor and life, and since I'm already using Abyssus, that takes away an item slot where I don't get life. The boots are an interesting choice because I don't get movement speed on them. Much like the Leap Sweeper, I use a movement skill with very fast attack speed to get around. In this case, it is Whirling Blades. Whirling Blades is linked with Blood Magic so that I can cast it indefinitely, and it also has Fortify and faster attacks. My chest piece consists of a lot of resist thanks to the Astral Plate, above average life, and armor. With the rings, I got accuracy, life, flat fizz, and stats, and in this case I like the diamond ring because it helps me get crit where I cannot get crit on the tree. The neck piece is a huge avenue of where you can get crit and crit multiplier. Unfortunately, in this case I was not able to get a crit multiplier amulet, but I did manage to get great flat fizz, decent life, and good crit chance. With the belt slot, there's nothing too special here. I chose a rustic sash with life, resist, and armor. I would say life and armor are the most important prefixes. Flask suffixes are also great if you can manage to get them, but I would highly recommend either a rustic sash or a leather belt. And now let's take a quick look at all the links that we haven't covered already. Reeve is linked with multi-strike, increase area of effect, fortify, physical to lightning, and melee physical damage. In my dagger, I have cast and damage taken, Arctic Breath, and GMP. This is one of my favorite triggers as it allows me to slow monsters down that attack me. It feels like cast and damage temp chains, only it's not inhibited by Hexproof, which is a curse immunity mod, and it also doesn't take up one of your curse slots, so it allows you to use a different curse, in this case Assassin's Mark. In my helmet I have Summon Ice Golem, Enduring Cry, Increased Duration, and Blood Rage. Increased Duration with Blood Rage is a huge quality of life so you don't have to keep recasting it, and it also increases the life regen per second from Enduring Cry, but not the actual War Cry itself. And lastly, in my shield, I have Arctic Armor, Hatred, and Enlighten. Now this is the hardest setup to get running. You don't need an Enlighten 4, but it allows you to run 100% Reservation and still have plenty enough to run Reave. Reave in this case on a 6 link cost me 23 mana, and I have 60 unreserved. It is worth noting that you could get a Corruption on a shield, which allows +1 level of socketed gems, and that could boost your Enlighten 3 to Enlighten 4. But until you can get your hands on an Enlighten 3, you can run Blood Magic in your 6 link Reave setup. I use Blood Magic instead of increased AoE as a replacement. And now let's talk about the Ascendancy choices. Why Berserker? Why not Juggernaut? And the short answer is, this character has so many layered defenses, I didn't need the Juggernaut defense. I just wanted to get more damage. And it just so happens that Aspect of Carnage gives you 40% more damage. That is insane. It comes with the downside of 10% increased damage taken. The notes preceding it gives you 12% Fizz, 6% attack speed. Crave of the Slaughter, 25% increased attack speed if you've been hit recently. 15% increased movement speed if you've been hit recently. And the node before that is 12% Fizz and 6% attack speed again. And in this case I picked up Rite of Ruin. 6% reduced damage taken if you've killed recently. Cannot be stunned if you've killed recently. And the node before that is 12% increased physical damage with attacks, 14% armor. Going into the next challenge league called the Prophecy League, you are granted the ability to obtain 2 more Ascendancy points through the Uber Lab, and Warbringer has been improved in that it gives you 25% of your life and mana gain when you use a Warcry. So now you get a 25% instant heal up from 10% when you use a Warcry. In addition, they've added the mod 100% increased Warcry duration. This means that your Rallying Cry will last twice as long, so the mana and damage returns will last over a long period of time. The amount of burst regen you get from Enduring Cry will be extended to almost 3 seconds with increased duration. And then the Abyssal Cry duration will give you a longer window to make kills so that you can get those Chaos Explosions. Pain Reaver got buffed in the Prophecy League. It gives you 1% damage leech's life and mana, and then it gives you 2% additional life leech if you've killed recently. You can get leech on gear, and you have leech through Blood Rage. I didn't feel like this was necessary. You can get leech on jewels, gloves, rings, and amulets, so I didn't feel like this was necessary. So the clear-cut winner for this particular character would be Warbringer, Rite of Ruin, Aspect of Carnage, and Crave of the Slaughter. Pain Reaver would be something I would pick up if I was struggling to find the items that I needed to get the leech. Now the Juggernaut was great and all, but going forward into the Prophecy League, we see that the Juggernaut is going to get a buff. Undeniable has been changed. Instead of giving you a flat 10% attack speed, it has been leaked to give you 1% attack speed per 1000 accuracy. Now Undeniable already gives you a flat 1000 accuracy rating, and this character currently possesses 4828 accuracy. That means I'll get 48% attack speed from Undeniable. That is undeniably awesome. Not only was Undeniable buffed, but Unyielding was buffed to give you 25% increased effect of Fortify on you. So you will get Unyielding, which will give you 1.5 maximum life regen per second while you have Fortify, 30% increased damage while you have Fortify, and then the node preceding it is 15% armor, 0.4% life regen. So you would have more regen than the Berserker, more attack speed than the Berserker, and then you'll have more defense, and an additional endurance charge. Unflinching still gives you 20% chance to gain endurance charge and a max endurance charge. And Unrelenting gives you 6% increased damage per endurance charge, which we will have 8 this time. And then 8% reduced elemental damage taken while at maximum endurance charges. That'll also help with Ellie Reflection. In addition to that, you will get the chance of gaining up to your maximum number of endurance charges if you gain an endurance charge. And that means if you were to cast Enduring Cry on one monster, you would normally get 1 endurance charge. Now this could give you 2, 8, 6, 7, but it's an insane way to drastically increase your endurance charge generation. If these changes make it through the Prophecy League patch, I highly recommend you do Juggernaut in hardcore, but you could still play the Berserker in softcore. I get a base of 56.2% crit chance without Assassin's Mark. Assassin's Mark would give me 9, that would be 65. So let me show you the jewels I use and how they support a crit build. I use Intuitive Leap to the left of Templar to pick up Faith and Steel and Overcharge without picking all these other fluff nodes. and I was able to pick up endurance without picking up the duration. Moving along to the jewel that I have above Resolute Technique, it's 12% accuracy, 18% crit with one-handed weapons, and life. In Templar, we have some crit support with accuracy, attack and cast speed, and movement speed, and dex, which gives you more accuracy. In Marauder, we have versatility, which gives you accuracy, increased attack speed, reduced mana cost of skills, and gives you more of your offstat, which is dex and int. So that's a very good cluster. The jewel I have between Duelist and Marauder grants more crit chance, life, resist, and the last jewel that I use under Duelist gives me attack speed, accuracy, and a lot of crit. So you can see with a lot of easy access jewels, you can get a lot of support for a crit build on the left hand side. As it stands in the current state, I have 116k DPS with just my charges and my flask, and I have upwards of 186k with my flask and my Ascendancy. And lastly, I wanted to talk about Reaver and its current state of the game. It rewards you with high DPS and great AoE clear, however it requires you to move from pack to pack very fast. If you like to pick up loot, if you like to identify things, Reaver might not be for you because you'll constantly lose your stacks. You only have 2 seconds to go up to the next mob and successfully hit it to continue your AoE stacks. And when you're Vol Reaving to get up to an 8 stack and then it falls off, it can get quite annoying. And I will say it makes combat quite meaningful because you're constantly having to make the decision of whether or not you want to Vol Reave or not. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because there's a new skill coming out in the Prophecy League that's called Lacerate. It is kind of like a Reave double strike hybrid. It does 2 swings that does it in AoE wave, and it goes out a respectable distance with some overlap in the middle, but it can only be used by axes and swords. Now, could you make a legitimate crit build with Lacerate on the left hand side of the tree? It would be pretty rough, and I don't think it would be nearly as good. And if you did do it, you probably need to do it with Var Nostra, which unfortunately was a Perandus only unique and now will be way harder to obtain. And that is all for this build guide. If you guys enjoyed this video and would like to support me, you can find out how to do so on my Twitch page. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will continue to do some more videos before the Prophecy League launches. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys at the next video.